How you doing, man?
Well, how are
Good to
you?
see you? Here, have a seat.
Thank you.
So, hey, how is it to work with Facebook?
You know, there's like 500 people in the measurement group, and
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of about 499 of them.
Awesome, awesome. There's been some news in the last month. Congratulations. I think
What happened?
Yeah, exactly. A new CrossFit gym opened up. The Oracle's acquisition of Moat was, I believe, great for Oracle, hopefully. It was certainly great for Moat.
Not shabby for Luma.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, but we're just derivative. Great for Moat and our investors. Great for the ecosystem and great for New York technology. So thank you for that. Tell us. Let's peel the onion on Moat, since it was your latest acquisition in a string. Why did you feel compelled to need to have that capability in-house of measurement?
We started when Datalogix got acquired by Oracle about 2.5 years ago now. We started to track a few spaces in kind of the general broad area of viewability, which I think Moat has very well morphed into a broader concept of attention. Hit our radar, and so we just became interested in the space. We had this notion that our focus really connecting advertising to outcomes. Brad did a great job of talking about that, and we really didn't have as much of a notion, and a lot of our business is measurement, but a lot is targeting also. And so if you think about in the targeting domain, we thought about how can you get ads to the right people, but then what happens once they're there, we got nothing to say about, right? And so we were increasingly interested in this notion, before you tie it to this outcome, 92% of which is offline, is there this persistent notion of not only getting it to ultimately the buyer, but getting their attention as well? Mm-hmm. And so for me, this fusing, what really came together is the notion of getting a buyer's attention is the core of what you're trying to do as a marketer. You're trying to get the attention of a buyer of your product. And so Moat was a perfect fit, right? If you think of it as a 2x2, everything has to be in 2x2s. You like those as well. We're the buyer axis, Moat's the attention axis. And I thought about it from a quadrant perspective, and I'll give you some real data. Moat's data would tell you that over 50% of videos don't, and I'm not, whether or not you agree with the MRC standard, I tend not to think that there's this, kind of binary cutoff, but if you use the MRC standard, 50% of video ads are falling below the standard, right? So if you think about the one side of the quadrant, if you have high viewability, low viewability, it's about 50-50. On our attention axis, you can do a similar analysis, and we looked at this across hundreds of CPG campaigns, and about half of the ads are going to people who don't even buy in the category of the product being pitched, right? And so you can literally divide this up, this little 2x2, and say only 25% of your ads are getting high attention of people who are likely to be interested in your product. Right. And so that raises the question, what about the other 75%? And we just thought we were in a really unique position with Moat, and this gets again into where Brad was leading this, that we can start to talk about buyer attention, tying viewability to outcomes, getting the right ads to the right people, and actually having them seen and figuring out how to optimize away from clearly the most useless quadrant is paying to not get the attention of people who will not buy your product. Right. And that's at least 25% advertising right now. But again, empirically, not just making it up. Yep.
So it's an efficiency and an effectiveness play. So I get the industrial logic, right?
Yeah.
How that capability plugs into the broader suite of products. I guess the question is and I want to get some insights into how you think about rent versus own, because I could make the case that you were already working well with Moat and IAS and Double Verify, the other players. What compels you? What tips you over the scale? Because my guess is that Oracle probably works with close to everyone in this room, but oddly, or at least not yet, you haven't acquired everyone in this room.
But you're not letting me leave until I do.
Correct. We'll get to that. And there's a volume discount. But what tips the scales is it a competitive issue? Is it a business case? What is compelling about owning versus renting the capability?
Well, I think first of all, there are very few of these capabilities that we would feel the need to own. As you suggest, I mean, for us, we really want to be part of an open ecosystem, kind of fueling everything. If I go with the data as the new oil, analogy, we want to be fueling everything. And so, the goal is to be primarily in partnering mode. I think if you look at, I'll just take the last two acquisitions we've done with Crosswise and Moat. Both were extremely kind of thesis-driven, multi-year theses that we saw play out. And so I'll talk about Crosswise. We believe that connecting devices, data, and so on, and incredibly important, and really liberating all this data that you have chained to the desktop so it can be used for mobile and TV and other use cases. We saw so much more that we could do with our data science if we could bring an asset in-house, right, rather than taking somebody else's output but getting raw signals like we needed them. So I think similarly with Moat, I think it was much more, it was the need to own, or the desire to own, was driven by the fact that we could do so much more with them as part of us, not so much a desire to close off other parties in either direction.
Yep.
In fact, you won't see us do that.
Right.
Right. So it's much more that we can do. So it wasn't a way to exert leverage over other players as much as it was we could build much better products through tight integration. And again, Brad gave me a great setup here because we're already working on that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's really in your DNA, this whole approach to inorganic growth. Just in the last 5 years, Eloqua, Responses, BlueKai, Data Logics, Maximizer, Crosswise, add this, and Moat, near as I can tell, over $6 billion. We call that at Luma a good start. Yeah, exactly. You as an organization, Oracle is probably a more aggressive organization than some others in terms of acquisitions, probably why he's on stage. But how do you think of product development, organic methods versus or inorganic as an overall strategy?
Well, I think Oracle's acquired something like 120 companies in the last 10 years, some crazy stat. And it's really, I was with the head of M&A yesterday, and
many could learn from that. Yeah.
It really, they really started to ramp in 2003. Interestingly, after kind of failing as venture investors, Oracle decided to get out of the business of minority investments and really focus on M&A. Most of the acquired valuation, that, of course, we never announced valuation, so I can't comment on any of the numbers you mentioned, but I had nothing to do with the vast majority of the companies you mentioned, right, to be clear. But I would say that certainly for 4 of them, as a seller of Data Logics and then a buyer of AddThis, Crosswise, and Moat, is pretty involved in those deals. It was an interesting mindset as an entrepreneur to come to Oracle and you think about what leverage there is. And there's no question that you think about you're part of a $40 billion revenue enterprise now, you want to make a dent, you want to have an impact.
Yep.
And so inorganic became part of my strategy rather than an afterthought. We'd bought a couple small companies at Data Logics over the years, but they were opportunistic afterthoughts. To have it be part of kind of a strategic road mapping, very different point of view. But I would say that most of our growth has been at the Data Cloud, even since Oracle, has been driven organically and will be. I'm a product guy, so I'm not an M&A guy, I'm a product guy, so I get most excited about the kinds of stuff we're talking about with Moat and bringing this idea of outcomes into Moat and combining the notions of buyers and attention. Those are what get us really jazzed, is what we can do afterwards.
It feels to us that you guys take a very sort of proactive approach in terms of thinking out your strategy, lining up what capabilities you think might be interesting, prioritizing them, and then developing relationships with them long before any transaction comes to the fore. Any advice for folks in this room in terms of how they interact with large strategics?
Well, I can't speak to others. I can speak to us again. It has happened that to date, every acquisition done since I think BlueKai was maybe a little different, and that was before my time, but speaking to Datalogic's AddThis, Crosswise, and Moat, all of them were extremely thesis driven, right? So none of them were opportunistic where somebody reached out and said, hey, we're selling the company, you want to take a look. It happens a lot at Oracle, and we virtually never engage. We just don't have time for it. So they tend to be theses that we're thinking about that are playing out. We've gotten to know the companies well, seen them execute in many cases over years. I mean, AddThis as an example, because I haven't talked about them, was a Datalogix and a BlueKai partner for multiple years before we did that deal. Right. BlueKai and Datalogix, few people know this, Datalogix was a Series A investor in BlueKai, one of the first 3 data partners. They were one of our 2 or 3 biggest partners, along with Facebook and Google, and we were their biggest data source. So we'd known each other for 5 years, right? So.
Yeah, well, I think it plays well into the advice we give our clients and prospective clients, which is often the best path to corp dev is through biz dev. Like get working with the company so they know you. I want to turn to the competitive landscape. There's a number of not dissimilar companies that started off with sort of CRM software products that had a lot of data that helped their clients with their other needs and marketing needs. The other sort of quote-unquote marketing clouds with Adobe and Salesforce, SAP, IBM are culminating, bringing together. You saw the slide Brian showed around, just on the identity assets that they were either building or acquiring. How do you think of or do you think of Oracle's position vis-a-vis these other groups? How do you work with them, or how are you competing?
So I want to make sure I understand. Are you saying how are we working with or competing the other marketing clouds?
Competitive landscape, yeah. Do you view them as competitors?
To the data cloud, much less so. To Oracle broadly, it depends, right? You take a company like Salesforce, and they compete with Oracle on a number of dimensions. Take a company like Adobe, not very competitive with Oracle in general, but in certain areas of the marketing tech stack, absolutely. Right. With respect to the data cloud, very little competitive overlap at this point with those companies, but no competitive overlap. But we have many joint clients that we work closely with. Right. I think if we think, I like this oil analogy, although I've been kind of the big evangelist of data as the new bacon, and I'm trying to shift to data as the new oil now. But
bacon's a lot more palatable.
The weird thing is, like, when I looked at market caps 10 years ago, there just weren't a lot of big bacon companies on that list. So I think I got to shift to oil if I want to think big here. How far back do you have to go to see bacon companies on that, market cap list? Oil wants to flow everywhere, right? So I think we need to work very closely and think kind of post-competitively about the world. And it sounds like it sounds like a platitude, but I really mean it. Like, we need to find surface area to collaborate with people who one might dismiss as competitive, I think. Okay. And we generally try to do that, yeah.
One of the capabilities...
Sorry, one more thing. Yep. I mean, at the end of the day, we know the ad dollars start, right, with the brand. And so if you have your main focus creating value for the brand, I'll take an example like Ford, who's a big client of the data cloud, is also a big Adobe DMP shop. It is very much in both our interests to make things work really well for Ford, right? So you use a lot more third-party data from us, a lot more first-party data through the Adobe DMP.
So there's just going to be a lot of mixing and matching going on out there. One of the capabilities that's probably most debated is this sort of intersection of MarTech and AdTech, where you talk about the paid media execution and whether companies building marketing clouds need to have that capability in-house, versus utilizing outside parties. Obviously, Adobe has made a couple steps in this area with the acquisition of Efficient Frontier and now TubeMogul. I know it's been a debate and a discussion at Oracle. How do you sort of view the current status of that thinking? Yeah,
well, I mean, I think certainly our data cloud acquisitions, and I think you can look at the marketing cloud acquisitions, which I haven't been close to the decision loop on, that we have very, very, I think, conspicuously decided not to play in the media activation space. The way I think about it is, it's much simpler for us and for the industry if they know that we're not in the business of buying or selling media. You know, it's just not what we do, right? We're there to kind of grow the pie for people buying and selling media, not to be the guys buying and selling media.
You and I had a great conversation on stage at your Oracle Drive conference, where your major component of your client set is the large auto companies, and a lot of the discussion that day seemed to focus around television. Obviously, they're big spenders in the channel. How do you think of the television opportunity we talked about earlier being the biggest digital opportunity? How do you think of it from Oracle's standpoint?
Well, I think the way you talked about it, I would agree with. I think it's a huge opportunity. It's, you know, I met my wife in the video on demand space. I worked at a video on demand, as well as the chief analytics officer at
you could take that the wrong
Oracle
way.
Data Cloud. Yeah. Well, no, I'm going to recover.
This is Roza. My apologies.
I'm going to recover from that one.
Lovely lady.
No, we worked for a company called Diva in the mid '90s that was $250 million into this company, mostly in debt financing pre-revenue, which was good, you know, good old glory days there. So this idea of, you know, kind of video being right around the corner, TV being right around the corner forever has been there, but we know this happens. We saw it with programmatic. We're seeing it with mobile now. I don't think anybody is going to make any money on the, kind of digital programmatic TV for the next few years. Right. But, 5 to 10 years from now, everybody's going to make money on it. You know, we can't have the impact we want at Oracle as the data cloud and be, business that's measured in the billions of dollars of revenue and all that without having a big TV play. And we're starting to invest pretty heavily in it across a number of different areas.
Awesome. It's many in the industry know, but if you don't, Eric, besides his day job, is an entrepreneur in yet another business. You own a CrossFit gym.
I do.
And
I know. And we now have Oracle's first CrossFit gym. We just built out a sweet CrossFit gym at Oracle's campus in Colorado.
If you ever have the opportunity, and I have now a couple times, had the chance to do a CrossFit workout with Eric, it's really phenomenal. There he is. So it turns out that, I photoshopped his head on that bike, but that's kind of what he would look like. I worked out with him, and I got to tell you, go ahead, take pictures. Sorry, didn't tell him about that. Don't worry, Linda's right now going, oh my God, what do I get coming? It's okay. The good news is we actually have the bottom half of that picture, and that's why we keep doing deals with Oracle. But I can tell you my personal experience that recently I was at this rather awesome event called Views that Celtra put on down at Necker Island, and Eric got together, at 6 a.m. or some godforsaken hour, a CrossFit opportunity to do a workout, and he set up these sort of 5 cycles and in a circuit, and we were doing five reps. So it was 25 minutes of sort of 90% of your heart rate, and I have to admit something. We were halfway through the second circuit when I was like, I can't do this. I'm not going to make it. And then I of course, realized, nope, actually, I don't have a choice. And so to salvage the Moat deal, I made it through all 5 circuits. It is pretty phenomenal. And besides the CrossFit, thank you for what you do in the industry. I think it's fascinating. Hopefully, lots more to come. Thank you, Eric.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks, Terry.